Hello, my name is Steve Bigelow with the Candlestick Forum. We have seen a reversal in the market today, but mostly instigated by the identification of a Doji candlestick signal. Now we can see the uptrend has remained in progress in the Dow as long as it didn't close below the T line. However, today there was selling and it closed below the T line just barely. Now that in itself isn't telling you there's strong selling occurring. Now there's two things that were in a factor today. One, when you're in the overbought condition and they start trading back below the previous day's open, that's a high probability indication they're coming back to test the T line. Is that going to be a sell signal? Again, just using the Dow alone doesn't tell you that. That's where you apply the other indexes. As you can see in the NASDAQ, after a doji on Friday, they gapped it down to the T line and went south. That's strong selling indication. Where's the next likely target? Probably back here to the 50-day moving average. So the assumption is you're below the T line, you had a gap down doji, you're probably in for at least a day or two more to the downside to see whether at least the 50 is going to act as a support level. So in that, if you've got a couple days to the downside, you want to find the strongest sell signals. Notice how the doji kind of failed right up here at the 200. Then it did a doji bearish gap down. Where do you think the next likely target is going to be with stochastics heading down? Play down here. This is where you can start shorting. So if we're seeing a market pullback, we're looking for chart patterns that are showing us that there's been a change of investor sentiment. You can see how Meta pulled back to the T line, doji, and remember what the doji rule is. The price will usually move in the direction of how they open after a doji. We like to point out, and that's part of the Candlestick Forum education, that if you can identify what is likely to happen after a candlestick signal, you've got much greater probabilities of being in a correct trade at the correct time. As you can see in Apple, notice you had a bullish day, they gapped it down and did a doji below the open of the previous day. That in itself said, get ready for some strong selling. They gapped it down again today, creating that bearish kicker signal, which is one of your strongest reversal signals, implying there's going to be more downside. So you can use the dojis to tell you there's a change of investor sentiment coming. So you don't necessarily have to have a candlestick confirmed sell signal closing below the T line. This was telling you to start watching, that you might want to be careful and start taking profits on your long positions. When you see a doji gap down, that tells you not only do you want to be out of this position, you can now be going short. So part of the training of using candlestick signals is knowing exactly what to do based upon how a price opens after a doji. AMAT, gap down, did a doji below the T line, kind of out of a wedge formation. Stochastics heading down, makes this a very simple trade. If they open lower, the doji rule, they're probably trading lower. You've got a gap to fill and a target. So everything we can analyze on a Japanese candlestick chart is based upon what are the formations, what are the individual signals telling us. Same on the bullish side. If you start seeing dojis at the bottom, you can see when to start buying. What does a series of dojis represent? Big indecision. What does this candle tell us? They've made their decision. This becomes a very strong buy on a positive open the next day. Same thing on PGNY. When you start seeing dojis in the oversold area, and then your best friend signal, one of your strongest bullish signals, and it gaps up and closes above the T line, you're creating a cradle pattern starting with the best friend signal coming out of a series of dojis. Extremely high probabilities you're in an uptrend. So everything we look at on a candlestick chart is identifying what investor sentiment is telling us it's about to do. That'll be it. We'll see you in the chat rooms.